You are now watching The Meech.
The time has finally come, hasn't it? Many have wanted a new Wii Sports game for many years, and considering the last one being Wii Sports Club was more of a remake and a weird experiment, there was a lot to be desired. Seeing how Wii Sports could evolve sounded incredible. Wii Sports Resort took the original Wii Sports and expanded on it in every way imaginable, and after nearly a decade and a half, we finally got a Wii Sports successor. The catch is that instead of evolving, it seemingly devolved. Nintendo Switch Sports. What caught everyone off guard was the removal of the established Miis for the new Sportsmates characters. All the Wii series games have Miis, so to see Wii Sports return without them was incredibly jarring. Could you imagine if a Metroid game didn't feature Samus to make room for generic-looking robots? Oh wait, need I say more? The lack of Miis is a major issue considering that you're constantly looking and interacting with characters, but while everyone was screaming about Matt, there was a far greater issue in the shadow. Come on guys, it's just Matt. What Nintendo will do is release a game in a state with very little content and cleverly disguise finishing the game as free updates. It's extremely sneaky, and many have been tricked into thinking these patches are free DLC. Even myself. I will never forget how swindled I felt after playing Mario Tennis Aces, and Nintendo Switch Sports would seemingly do the same. You may be wondering why I bought the game. Some may say my points are invalid because I bought the game, but the alternative is that I get a bunch of comments saying my points are invalid because I emulated the game. If you attempt to call me out for buying the game, I'm just going to ignore you. Cool? Cool. Except this is a perfectly reasonable question considering my strong resentment of the game, and not giving an answer would be rather pretentious. The answer? There's an excellent solution if you want to play or review a game that you don't want to support. Buy it secondhand. Getting a game used does not benefit a developer. That way you're getting a retrospective, and Nintendo doesn't get a cent out of me. I will always be honest about my thoughts, even if they antiquate my first impressions. I'd love to be proven wrong. So the question is, does Nintendo Switch Sports achieve the goal of being a new iteration of Wii Sports, or is it as disappointing as a gutter ball? Starting off, let's address the elephant in the room. The first thing you'll do in Switch Sports is create your character. I assume the resentment towards the Sportsmates primarily had to do with them replacing Miis, because the general designs for the characters look quite good. They look similar to Animal Crossing villagers, and for a sim game, they'd fit in quite well. So what's the issue? Not only do they replace the Miis, but they do an absolutely awful job at doing so. I've seen the claims saying people are only upset about Miis not being the focus because of nostalgia, or that Miis are somehow outdated. And I have a response. There's nothing wrong with the Miis. There's a reason why Miis succeed in a world of cringe-inducing avatars, and I've boiled it down to a science. The Miis do not attempt to be more than what they are. They're caricatures and are not designed to look realistic, but there are so many customization options that Miis can still be very creative. On the other hand, avatars such as Samsung's AR emojis fail because they try to look realistic despite the limited customization. Now let's take a look at the Sportsmates. The Sportsmates are stylized, but there's next to no customization. Take a guess how many hairstyles there are by default. 25? 15? Only 6! And the ones that they chose are very specific and not even standard. You can't even wear a hat or go King Neptune. Not only that, you can't even have a mustache or glasses by default. Yeah, real worthy of replacing Miis. But guess what? You can unlock more customization options. But with the default options, you're better off just using a Mii. Sure, they look out of place, but it beats the alternative. Let's check out the sports and see if we can unlock something as earth-shattering as glasses or my own freaking hairstyle. There are as many sports as there are hairstyles. Only 6. This is half the amount of Resort, not even counting the additional modes. But maybe it's a quality over quantity thing, even though Wii Sports Resort managed to have both quantity and quality. But we gotta give Japan's biggest company some slack. They're really struggling, aren't they? Poor indie developers. First up is tennis. Considering Pong is going to be half a century old, tennis is about as classic as it gets for a video game. Tennis in Switch Sports is no exception. It plays virtually identically to how it did in Wii Sports and in Wii Sports Club. It's what you would expect, and I'm definitely fine with that. But unfortunately, there's a lack of options. You can only play doubles with no option for singles. Some may argue it was the same in Wii Sports, so that makes it okay here. Yeah, it was the same in Wii Sports. I didn't like it there either. It's ridiculous that some think just because a prior game did something, it's okay to do it again. But overall, it's solid enough. It's 1 sport out of 6, so we're off to a pretty good start. My favorite sport in any of the Wii Sports games is hands down bowling. The concept is simple, but there's a lot of strategy involved. It's very close to how bowling is played in real life. Despite my gripes with Switch Sports, I assume bowling would still be just as good as it was before. But unfortunately, Nintendo dropped the ball here. I would say throw the ball behind, but this is Switch Sports. You can't do that. Nintendo doesn't care or try anymore. I'm quite good at bowling in Wii Sports, but to get there, I had to figure out which strategies would be the best to use, especially in the more intuitive Resort and Club. But in Switch Sports, it's simplified to the point where if you find a good angle, you can keep getting strikes and spares. It's nowhere near as precise as even the original. The pins also don't feel as satisfying to knock down. Now this relates more to the general presentation, but it does take away the immersion. Don't get me wrong, bowling can still be fun, but it's by far my least favorite way to play it in any of the Wii Sports games. Oh boy, I can't wait to play Chum Bucket. Next up is Chumbara, better known to the Super Mario Bros. The Lost Levels is Too Difficult group, as swordplay. This is the only returning sport from Resort, but unlike bowling, I found it to be just as good, if not a bit better than how it was in Resort. You can choose between 3 different swords, my favorite being the twin swords. The different swords don't change up the gameplay too much, but having the options is nice. Your main goal is to knock your opponent down into a fountain in front of a Macy's. Wow, such high stakes considering you'd plunge into the ocean in Resort, but overall, it's pretty fun and the movement is rock solid. Next up is tennis. Oh wait, it's not tennis, it's badminton. The concept is the same, but unlike tennis being exclusively doubles, badminton is exclusively singles. Both play very similarly, but badminton is way better. Hitting the birdie feels far more satisfying than the ball in tennis, and surprisingly, badminton matches can get quite intense. It's surprisingly a blast to play, but at the end of the day, it's just a variation of tennis. In any other Wii Sports game, this would be a mode and not its own sport. 1/3 of the sports are virtually the same, and I assume volleyball would be too. There's good news and bad news. The good news is that volleyball does play differently than tennis and badminton. The bad news is, it plays as well as using a box jellyfish as a volleyball. The movements are similar to what you'd expect. You push the ball up, you spike it, and you can block. But the Joy-Cons cannot accurately sense the movement. This leads to many actions either not being recognized or poorly timed. But once you do get an idea of the movement, it's slow and it drags on. Not a fan of this one. Tennis, Chumbara, and badminton play well. Bowling is underwhelming and oversimplified. And volleyball is an absolute hot mess. But if there's one sport I really wanted to see in a Wii Sports successor, it was soccer. Considering how Wii Sports is defined by the motion controls, it only makes sense for the included leg strap accessory to be used for the new soccer game. So let's get it set up. Okay, don't know why the leg strap is like this. Not sure why I'd need this. Ah, there we go. Let's do this! Well, that's weird. The leg strap seemingly doesn't work. It's literally just a piece of fabric, so there's no way the hardware could be faulty. Okay, get this. You can't even play soccer with the included peripheral. Only a stupid minigame. We have seriously gotten to the point where Nintendo has become so arrogant that they included an accessory that isn't even fully functional day one. That is legitimately unbelievable. But don't worry, they're including basic functionality in a free update. What's keeping you engaged? I'll tell you what, anything besides this game, if any other company did this, they would never hear the end of it. But hey, doesn't every developer package a game with an accessory that's not even fully functional day one? Let's see how soccer is anyway. I was optimistic because many stated soccer is the best sport in the game, but personally, I didn't have any fun playing it. The concept is what soccer should be, but there's a stamina meter. If it was used to run fast, that would be fine, but the characters move so slow that running is what should be the walking speed, and to kick, You swing the Joy-Cons. You know what this tells me? It tells me that the game was rushed and was meant to have leg strap support day one, but Nintendo just wanted to put it out anyway. It's a bit reminiscent of Rocket League. Many praise soccer here because of that, but if that's the case, you know what I'd do? Play freaking Rocket League! And that game is free, while this costs $50. While volleyball is worse, soccer is easily the most disappointing. Only 3 of the sports feel polished, and if you include tennis and badminton as one, that's only 2. Bowling is underwhelming, soccer is baffling and disappointing, and volleyball is utter garbage. But if half the sports are good, that likely means the game could probably dodge the ranking of trash. A great presentation can definitely help a game out, so let's see how it is in Switch Sports. Switch Sports takes place in a brand new central location, Spoko Square. It's a sporting complex located in a big city, and the concept of a central location is good. Wii Sports Resort did this beautifully with Woohoo Island. Spoko Square consists of primarily sporting arenas, but you'll see things such as stores and restaurants in the background. From a visual standpoint, everything looks quite good. There's a good attention to detail and the colors are vivid. But here's the problem. Even though Spoko Square looks good visually, it's not an exciting or fun location to center a game around. The reason why I love Nintendo is because their games provide immersive experiences for things you couldn't do or wouldn't do in real life. Well, technically you could replicate some of the things Mario does in New Donk City, but if you did that, expect the fuzz to show up. But let's compare Spoko Square to Woohoo Island. What makes Woohoo Island such an excellent location is not only how it ties everything together, but it provides an experience. It's essentially a character of itself, and that's what Miyamoto was going for. Exploring the island through the sports provides a player with a sense of exploration. You can even fly over the island and see the island from a grander perspective. Now let's take a look at Spoko Square. While it does tie everything together, it doesn't feel like a character. It's very standard and a very typical location. What's more exciting, exploring a tropical island or exploring a convention center? Spoko Square is similar to a typical house you'd see on HGTV. Nice to look at, but there's nothing fun about it. Music, on the other hand, is a different, but similar story. The main theme is pretty good, but the majority of the tracks were able to do something no Nintendo game has ever done before. Ever since the beginning of the decade, I've had sleeping issues. I've tried counting sheep, staying up for 24 hours straight, and a bunch of other things that didn't work. But the soundtrack in Switch Sports completely fixed my sleep schedule. It's made to sound like a speaker in the background, and the proper term for it is diegetic. The relatable term is unbelievably boring. Never did I feel the music enhance the gameplay or hype me up. Even elevator music has more personality. But the best way to describe the entire presentation of Switch Sports is soulless. When I covered Wii Sports Club, there's a very specific reason why I said the game lacked personality, but wasn't completely devoid. That's because Switch Sports is completely devoid. Let's take a look at getting a strike and spare in Wii Sports, Wii Sports Club, and Nintendo Switch Sports.
Great shot! Nice spare! Spare! Nice throw! Nice one! Strike!
In Wii Sports, getting a strike was an incredible feat. In Club, you know you did a good job. In Switch Sports, there's no satisfaction whatsoever. And this lack of personality applies to everything. The UI font and logos are oversimplified. Great, do we really have to go back to this again? And the announcer is as melodic as an alarm clock. If Nintendo Switch Sports wasn't tied to the Wii Sports series, I guarantee you nobody would even care about it. That's because the game doesn't even resemble a Nintendo game. Wii Sports Club isn't exactly what most would call a gorgeous game, but there's no denying that's a Nintendo game. Switch Sports, on the other hand, legitimately looks like a Wii Sports bootleg. Never mind, I take that back. Even bootleg games have more life put into them. The fact that a shady, illegitimate Mario game made by a team of Igor Pavel and Dimitri has more personality than a game made by Nintendo goes to showcase how downhill they have become. But it's not just limited to Switch Sports. I've noticed most of Nintendo's casual games on the Switch have a very distinct unbranded look to them. All the Labo games, Clubhouse games, and Game Builder Garage, they're perfectly fine games, but here's what I don't get. Why is Nintendo so adamant about taking down fan games and anything that uses their franchises, only to then go for a great value art direction? It's like if Coca-Cola did everything possible to wipe out anything related to their brand, only to heavily market unbranded cola. That's not saying these games need to be part of an established series, but the characters and presentations are so devoid of creativity, and it boggles my mind. The sports are a mixed bag. The presentation is lifeless. Things aren't looking pretty, but maybe, just maybe, the content is packing. The Wii Sports games are made for multiplayer, and Switch Sports is no exception. My pal Riley was overjoyed to have a break from Kablooey to enjoy some Nintendo Switch Sports. Badminton is very fun. He had fun with bowling, even though I found it underwhelming. But our experience with soccer and volleyball remained the same. The most important thing he wanted me to know is that he agrees that the music is suckish. Another thing that's worth bringing up is that some sports only support 2 players. All of them should have support for up to 4 players, but if there's any that would benefit from more players, it would be soccer. It's clear soccer isn't even finished. Not to mention, each player needs their own user account on the Switch. Why? Well, the game is significantly more fun in multiplayer. We didn't play it for long. We then went back to Wii Sports Club and found the experience to be way more fun. If you don't have any of the Wii Sports games, Switch Sports is somewhat serviceable. Not only do I say that because the Wii Sports games are better, but they have way more content. Wii Sports Resort and even Club have many training mini-games, so in addition to the sports, you have many different ways to play. But in Switch Sports, what you see is what you get. The only extra modes are bowling spin control and soccer shootout. And guess what? It manages to lack the most basic of features. Wow, I'm so surprised. If you play the game locally, there's no unlockables, no skill level, nothing. Just the sports. Nintendo hosted a global playtest, which they strictly prohibited sharing footage from. That right there was a major red flag. What I assumed is that the game would launch unfinished and lack content, just like Mario Tennis Aces, but the game surprised me in a way I never could have even imagined. Switch Sports has online multiplayer, Wii Sports Club did as well, but the main game was local. I assumed the same would apply to Switch Sports, but as it turns out, the entire game is centered around online. The good news is that the online works pretty well without prominent lag. The bad news is that Switch Sports is designed to be a game as a service. This is where all the unlockables and content are. I would maybe be more forgiving if the online provided a solid and engaging experience, but as the anthem goes for Switch Sports, how low can you go? How low can you go? Let's say you want to unlock your own hairstyle or glasses. There's no way to do so unless you grind. You get points to unlock items, but what you get is completely random. That means you'll need to potentially play the game for hours to unlock what you want. And guess what? Unlockables rotate. So to unlock everything, you'd need to play the game constantly. You can apparently unlock items without having a Switch Online membership, but it's designed to be so limited that it pressures you into getting the online service. You already bought the game, why not throw another $20 to get the service? Really convenient considering the $40 price tag. Why is it that EA is one of the most hated companies for how anti-consumer they are, but when Nintendo does similar things, they just get a free pass? What? Because they have popular franchises and likable characters? That's what they want you to think. Luigi, our Switch console's doing very well. What should we do next? Well, Mario, I had a pretty good idea to involve microtransactions. Wario told us to name them Nintoken. That way they'd seem cutesy even though they're pretty greedy. How does that sound? Sounds good, Luigi! There have been other Nintendo games that do this. Mario Tennis Aces has unlockables locked behind a paywall as well, but at least they're just costumes. Switch Sports locks the entirety of the game behind it. I know what you're thinking. Games like Super Mario Maker 2 and Splatoon have many features locked behind online as well. The reason why it's acceptable in those games is because they're clearly designed and marketed as online experiences. Wii Sports is defined by local multiplayer and being a game anyone can understand and have fun with. Switch Sports never indicated it would be a service game, and people love Wii Sports because it's something even their grandparents can play. Switch Sports is the absolute last game that should ever be a service, and even if it wasn't, this isn't a game I would play at a family gathering, because I'd probably get disowned. So far we've established that Nintendo Switch Sports can be fun, but fails due to extremely limited customization, a presentation as lively as a graveyard, and next to no content. Not only that, but the game being centered around online without any indicator it would, is flat out deceptive. So what's the verdict? Never have I been at a loss for words as much as I have been for Switch Sports. Bad Nintendo games do exist, but they usually fail due to poor game design and features that aren't thought out well. It was almost never due to the lack of trying, but after playing Switch Sports, I was in for an absolutely rude awakening. As a Wii Sports successor, it fails miserably. It has half as many sports as Wii Sports Resort, but even going back to the original, the sports are nowhere near as good. The 5 sports in Wii Sports were all very different and intuitive. It also included the training games and a skill level. Even Wii Sports Club, the game defined by being dumb, is better than Switch Sports. Baseball and boxing are a bust, but at the very least, it included training games, a skill level, and personality, even if it is faded. There's also been the common notion that people say it boils down to just nostalgia for people who don't like Switch Sports. I've said on multiple occasions, nostalgia can be the worst thing for a series. Ask any Mario fan about the games from 2012 to 2016 and see how they feel about them. The reason why Switch Sports doesn't deliver is because it's an overall worse experience than its predecessors. I had an idea what the game could be like, but one thing I often questioned was the unbelievably high review scores. Opinions are subjective, I get that, but giving an 8 out of 10 to a game that didn't even have the servers up for reviewers, that's a bit questionable, because the bulk of the game is locked behind the online. What's even more concerning is the fact that so many people legitimately think that the definition of unfinished is the main problem. Take a look at this. Nintendo games aren't unfinished, they're just incomplete. Whoa! Watch out, Einstein! This guy obviously knows what he's talking about. Here's my solution. For those concerned about the definition of what makes a game unfinished, go into a corner, drool into a dictionary, and let the rest of us enjoy games that are actually complete! Nintendo, you won't stop me from giving Switch Sports the ranking it deserves!
This is FRFU Go.
Finish him! Finish him!
Alright. You can't even finish yourself. Not chance in hell you can finish me. Even Justin Bieber could get the better out of me. You embarrassing piece of trash. No girl wants to date you because you can't even finish. Oh, and you have a Joy-Con instead of a Wii remote. See you in the bargain bin, you embarrassment. Peace out. Ouch. Haha, you can't finish me either.
J-Money Christmas. It's beautiful. Let's see if it works. What's your favorite website?
Twitter!
Oh my goodness, my project is finally finished.
You mean complete?
Wonderful.
Welcome to Demich's Game Gallery. Today we'll be covering 2 games for the Nintendo Switch video game console. Nintendo Switch Sports is the newest iteration in the Wii Sports series, and judging by the name alone, I know it's gonna be good. There are 6 sports to choose from, but Nintendo is adding more out of the goodness of their heart. Free updates are a longevity thing, and it's what keeps players engaged. Now sure, the online lobbies might be a little empty now, but they just went on a Starbucks run, and we'll be back soon. Nobody is engaged to games like Super Smash Bros. Melee and Mario Kart Wii because they didn't get free updates, and retro games before online gaming are forgotten anyway. We want to make sure the engagement is high to make up for the fact that I'll never get engaged. There aren't a lot of options, but Nintendo is going to be nice and hopefully add more. You can experience everything the game has to offer within an hour or two, but that's okay because it's a Nintendo game. Mario and Sonic at the Tokyo 2020 Olympics has over 20 sports, but Sega is only known for providing gas stations with the price scan sound. The reason it doesn't have much content is because of a simple answer: cost. So it's okay for the game to be content light, and it's only $50, so it's a budgie game. Yet again, I do cover Nintendo games and only make $2 an hour. Even though Switch Sports doesn't have intuitive gameplay, the basic fun it can provide gives it the score of a 9 out of 10. Up next is Pokemon Brilliant Diamond. This is a remake of the 2006 Nintendo DS game, Pokemon Diamond. Unlike Heart Gold and Soul Silver and even Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, this game stays true to the original, and it's an extremely faithful remake. It has the original cast of Pokemon, and none of the new ones. Nobody likes the Candlemen anyway. It's such a faithful remake that it emulates when the DS battery is low by sending you to the home menu every now and then. Some people call this the game crashing. The correct term is going into hibernation. It also has a few Easter eggs. For those who cheated with an action replay, there's a nod to the potential bugs from a bad code. It's so cool to see the game reference something that's that obscure. Even though Pokemon Platinum was a pure expansion of Diamond and Pearl with a lot of new features and improvements, Brilliant Diamond keeps it so original and faithful to the originals, and is a 1-to-1 faithful remake, giving it the score of 11.7 out of 10.
Stop right there!
Excuse me?
A little birdie told me you've gone absolutely nuts, and I'm here to stop it.
What are you talking about? I'm fine.
You're okay? You're about to give Pokemon Sword and Shield a 9.3 out of 10. You despise that game.
9.3 is too low, you're right.
That blue buffoon messed with your brain.
He's blue, da-ba-dee-da-ba-die.
I've tried talking to you, and it failed. This can't go on. This is my last resort, and it's not Wii Sports Resort. Demich, can you hear me? What do you think of Mario Tennis Aces?
It's an unfinished dumpster fire.
Thank goodness you're okay. Hee-yah! That's for saying it's just Matt earlier.
I deserve that.
Demich, you're an untitled, ungrateful meanie, but Switch Sports reeks. Let's team up and take out Switch Sports for good.
No way. You're serious?
Hey, it's that bird from earlier.
Let's do this.
Baba Kablooey!
Alright, Nintendo Switch Sports escaped to a very secret hideout. I have an idea where it is, but we'll need transportation.
I got us covered. Shawnee boy!
And here we are. Let's take out the trash for good.
I'm ready for you this time.
Step right up if you're ready to get toasted.
Here, have some bombs.
Miiverse, assemble!
Nintendo Switch Sports gets the ranking of soulless, lazy, no care put into it, embarrassing, baffling, unappealing, deceptive, cash grab, lifeless, absurd, overpriced knockoff, bootleg, nothing to do, unfinished, absolute dumpster fire, doo-doo bag of fire, trash. Do not buy this game!